All right, Oklahoma fans, big time matchup with the Oklahoma Sooners this weekend against Ole Miss. Ole Miss coming to Norman. It's going to be a top 15 matchup, and it's one of those games that both teams really feel like they need, and especially when we talk about the 12-team playoff and the college football playoff coming up, and it's getting closer to towards the end of the season. We're getting closer to November. I've got Zack Nagy here with me to join me. Zack, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, man, of course. I'm looking forward to this weekend. It's a college football playoff type of environment that we're expecting this weekend. It's pretty much a must-win for both programs to keep those hopes alive. So looking forward to it and looking forward to talk some ball.
Yeah, and are my notes correct here? Is this Ole Miss's first time coming to Norman?
I believe that is the case.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. It's really insane when you think of kind of bigger programs. I think Ole Miss is a pretty historical program with everything that's gone through Ole Miss, and Oklahoma obviously being the blue blood that they are, that there's so many different matchups here in the SEC that it's the first time Oklahoma went to Auburn. I think the first time Auburn came to Oklahoma, and now you got the same thing with, I think last year was the first time Oklahoma went to Oxford, and now the first time Ole Miss coming to Norman. It's just been really fun to kind of see all these new matchups. And I'm sure the rest of Oklahoma, Sooner fans feel the same way, that it's been really fun joining the SEC. And I've heard a lot from the SEC fans that it's been fun to kind of have Oklahoma and Texas both coming into the conference, kind of adding new rivalries. Now Ole Miss is going to be a new quote unquote rival with Oklahoma. So, first thoughts on that with Ole Miss and Oklahoma getting matched up together?
Yeah, welcome to the new expanded Southeastern Conference, man. It's exciting to see all these new rivalries kind of coming about, or I guess newfound rivalries, however you want to call it. But yeah, I'm excited to see it. I'm a big fan of Brent Venables and what that program's building over there. I know Lane Kiffin had his little side comments about the annual rivalry and whatnot, and how he didn't quite understand it. But nonetheless, here we are. I think it sets the stage for a really good one for the next couple of years. Obviously, the SEC is going to go back and kind of reevaluate these rivalries that they made up for the next couple of years. They'll reevaluate in the next couple of years. So I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a good one. Like you said, this is the first time Ole Miss is hitting the road and going to Oklahoma. So it sets the stage for a good one. And what more could you ask for? Top 15 matchup, college football playoff implications on the line. I'm expecting a really good one.
Yeah, and to be honest, I came out right away when Lane Kiffin made that statement and was like, I understand where he's coming from. This is just a weird. Ole Miss wasn't really on the list of teams that Oklahoma was expecting. I think it was like LSU, Florida, A&M. There was a bunch of teams, but Ole Miss really wasn't on that list of teams that Oklahoma would have expected. But this is a big time matchup, like we mentioned, kind of playoff implications on the line in some regard. And I think to that point, it's playoff implications in the sense that if you go into this thing and you end up, if you come out of this game losing, you've got 2 losses. 3 losses, anybody has a shot, but as Ole Miss knows, as Alabama and South Carolina knows, that 3 losses does not guarantee you anything, no matter how good your schedule is. For Oklahoma, even with the tough schedule that they've got, 3 losses doesn't guarantee you the college football playoffs. So with 2 losses, it puts your back up against the wall at the very least. And so, kind of coming into this game, how big is this game from an Ole Miss perspective, especially going against Oklahoma, your first time coming to Norman, and then with those playoff implications on the line?
Yeah, it's about as big as it gets. And Lane Kiffin has stressed the importance of this one, just knowing that you're coming off of that loss in Athens last week, which was pretty much a heartbreaker for that team, man. You're up 9 going into the fourth quarter. You give up 17 points in the fourth, get outscored 17-0, and you really drop the ball there. So for this one, it's a do or die type of matchup for this program. And I like how you alluded to the fact that you can win 9, you can go 9-3 and potentially make it, but Ole Miss and other programs have seen that you might not come out on the right end of that. So you got to go out there and you got to treat this one as a must-win opportunity. Lane Kiffin and his staff have done that all week. Preparation is obviously key when you're going up against a quarterback of John Mateer's caliber. This is a guy who still kind of shaking back from that injury, sure. But nonetheless, this is a guy who was at the top of that Heisman Trophy race and one that defenses don't take lightly, and Ole Miss included. So, again, I ended the last statement with the same thing. It sets the stage for a really, really big one here, and Ole Miss is really entering this one with a college football playoff or bust type of mentality.
Yeah, I think every team really wants to control their own destiny, and that's the goal throughout your season.
Yeah.
2 losses, you can still control your own destiny, but once you get to 3, you don't control it anymore. It takes a lot of other
Right.
maybe chaos to happen where there's plenty of other 9-3 teams that you are now compared against, or that the committee sees you're 9-3 and recognizes that, hey, they're 9-3, but they went against, look at this brutal schedule, and that's not what you want. That's not controlling your own destiny. But let's talk about this Lane Kiffin group, and specifically over on the offensive side, and just look, because I think everybody looks at this as Ole Miss is going to have to beat Oklahoma through their offense, and Oklahoma is going to have to beat Ole Miss through their defense, which is the perfect kind of matchup, really, for any kind of fun game. And I think that's what makes this one so interesting and so fascinating, so fun to watch, or what I believe will be fun to watch, because you got Ole Miss, who's averaging 37 points per game, or over 37 points per game, nearly 500 yards per game, just a top 10 nationally type of offense overall. What kind of makes this offense click so much, especially with the backup quarterback now as your new starter?
Yeah, I think it's just the ability to have Kawan Lacey in your back pocket. I think this is one of the top running backs in the SEC. He's sensational with the ball in his hands, and his numbers might not reflect that all the time, but he's a guy that's a super reliable piece. And when you have a quarterback who doesn't necessarily have SEC experience, at least coming into the year, it's nice to have a guy to fall back on. And we've really seen that with Lacey over these last couple of weeks since Trinidad Chambliss has taken over as that starting quarterback for this team. And make no mistake about it, he certainly went into the year as the backup quarterback, but this is a starting caliber guy, and he's proven that over these last couple of weeks. From his first start against Arkansas, getting into the game late against Kentucky, his numbers jump off the page, and he's certainly been a guy that's really exceeded expectations. I mean, the story in Oxford has been really fun to watch with, the little Trinidad flags on the doorsteps and stuff and all these different things. I mean, Trinidad Chambliss is the truth. I'm a big fan of what he's provided this team so far, and lucky for him, he has Lane Kiffin in his back pocket to sit there and do the play calls for him, man. This is an offensive mastermind in Kiffin, and we know that from years past. So nonetheless, man, you utilize the weapons that you have in Deuce Alexander on the outside, Caden Lee, DeJon Stribling, etc. You're in a good spot. I like the receivers. I like the skill position guys that they have here going into this one. But DeQuan Wright is going to be a player that I'm keeping tabs on. The way that they utilize the tight end position has been one that's given them a tremendous advantage over the last couple of weeks. He's listed as questionable in the availability report. I'd be surprised to not see him play this week. So you continue to utilize Trinidad and the weapons that he has on the outside, have that balanced attack with Kawan Lacey, and it puts you in a really good spot. It's going to be a challenge, of course. Brent Venables is a defensive-minded coach, and he's shown that in years past. But nonetheless, Ole Miss has some firepower on offense. It's going to be a good one. It's kind of strength against strength, which, like you said before, it sets the tone for a good one.
We saw Ole Miss against Georgia, and anybody who walks away from that game not really impressed with really either team must really not be focusing on everything that went into that game, because
Right.
It was an offensive game back and forth there really early in the game, where Ole Miss, I believe, scored touchdowns on their first five possessions before kind of going quiet late in the game. Was that a bit, because I think if you go back to last season and the last game that Oklahoma and Ole Miss played against each other, Oklahoma found out that Lane Kiffin is really good about being able to adjust, and seeing what the defense gave him last year. Right. He was able to adjust and say, hey, I see some weaknesses that we can attack. Second half came out and did just that. Of course, on defense, I think they did a very similar job. But in that game against Georgia, it really felt like there was a lot of adjustments made by Kirby Smart, and obviously one of the greats and one of the best at doing that as well. Do you think it was more of the adjustments from Kirby Smart's Georgia team, or do you think it was just Ole Miss losing their rhythm and not being able to find it there in the fourth quarter?
I think you have to give credit to Kirby. I mean, this is one of the best in the business, and he has been for quite some time. So you got to give him some credit there. Yes, they scored on their first 5 possessions, and were pretty much nearly flawless. I mean, Trinidad Chambliss went to a electric environment and really lived up to the billing over there. So you got to give him credit for that hot start, but you got to give credit on the other side of the ball too, and what Kirby Smart did from an adjustments perspective. And that's where it's going to be really fun this weekend against Oklahoma. Brent Venables can really go out there and change things up in the second half and give Trinidad different looks. I mean, this is a guy who has only played less than a handful of SEC games, and now you're going on the road once again to Norman. So it's going to be difficult for him, but nonetheless, I think the adjustments that defenses have made over the last couple of weeks have given them some issues, even dating back to LSU in week 5. They came out and they were dominant really in the first half. But then you look at the second half and Ole Miss only scored 7 points. So for me, it's really going to be fun to watch the second half transpire and see the adjustments that Brent Venables makes. But Lane Kiffin's going to be prepared for that, and he's seen his team kind of struggle in the third and fourth quarters down the last couple of weeks. Now it's time to kind of turn things up a notch and stay consistent through 4 quarters.
And do you think that Ole Miss fans are a little concerned about this Ole Miss this Ole Miss offense going against this Oklahoma defense? Because it's been an offense that has just been explosive, and then now you go over to Oklahoma and you go to Norman at 11 a.m. kickoff, which Gabe Eichert kind of mentioned, on I believe it was on X, on social media, that hey, Oklahoma's pretty used to these things, being in the Big 12. They're used to these 11 a.m. kickoffs, but then going against this defense who really has been elite and one of the top defenses, if not the top defense in the nation. Do you think Ole Miss fans and the program there is a little concerned about this defense and how well their offense can perform against a defense this tough?
If they're not, they should be, because certainly, like you said, it's one of, if not the top defenses in the SEC or all of America. I mean, they're dominant, and Brent Venables is a phenomenal coach, and Lane Kiffin has talked about that, how defensive-minded he is and how he gets the most out of his players. So if they're not nervous or not worried, they should be. Because certainly it's going to be a daunting task coming up ahead. And I like that you threw out there that 11 a.m. kickoff piece. In the SEC, you might get 1 or 2 of those every single year. On the other side, Oklahoma's used to it in years past. So they have a slight advantage in that regard, paired with being at home, paired with a strong defense. It gives the Sooners a really good chance in this one. And there's a reason why Vegas is kind of giving them the edge in this one. So nonetheless, if they're not worried, they should be. I think LSU. I think Ole Miss is a fire-powered offense. But it's going to be a daunting task against this Oklahoma D.
Yeah, I think Vegas giving Oklahoma the edge was really shocking, even to a lot of Oklahoma fans at first. But the more that I've kind of dove down through a lot of the stats and trying to look and compare these teams, a big part of that comes down to being at home. And then also just, again, the matchup there, the offense of Ole Miss against Oklahoma's defense. And you've really got a lot of question marks that are going to be answered this weekend. And I think that is what makes it so exciting. But let's jump over and talk a little bit about Trinidad Chambliss, a little bit more anyways, because it truly is a spectacular story that we've seen from this. Austin Simmons goes down hurt and everybody said, Ole Miss is done. Ole Miss, they're out. They got to go and turn over to a D2 quarterback who nobody even knows who he is. And as amazing as the name is, we don't know who this guy is. And then he steps onto the field, comes from D2 national champion, which a lot of people overlook or may not even know. He is a national champion, and now turning into becoming one of the best QBs in the country. Has he basically stolen the starting position at this point?
I would say so. I think you see a lot of national analysts come out and say Trinidad starting this week. Trinidad starting this week every single, let's say Wednesday or Thursday, whatever it is. But this is a guy who's taken over the starting job, and I can't envision them turning back anytime soon, barring anything drastic happening over the next couple of weeks. I mean, the story is there. The story's been fantastic. This is a Division II All-American, a Division II national champion who came in uncertain if he'd get any playing time. I mean, this was Austin Simmons' job. They're paying him handsomely. They paid him like the starting quarterback that he's supposed to be. He stuck around, and nonetheless, this was his team and his job. And then he gets banged up with that ankle injury, and the rest is history. I mean, Trinidad Chambliss has been a guy who unlocks different elements to this offense. But for me, man, the most important piece to it is the way that he takes care of the football. I mean, I think he's only thrown 1 interception this year. So for me, just the way that he can take care of the football is an element that Austin Simmons wasn't providing them over the first couple of weeks. You look at week 1 and week 2, and he threw a pair of interceptions in the first half in both games. He was a little bit sporadic. And then you bring in a veteran. He's not a veteran in the SEC. He's not a veteran in Division I football, but he's a veteran in the game. And his IQ was on full display over those first couple of starts that he had. And it's hard to turn back on that. I mean, when you're stuffing the stat sheet and allowing your other outside receivers to eat, it puts your team in a really good position, and we've seen them thrive over these weeks with it. So, yeah, yes, he's been fantastic. But Dejon Stribling, and you look at Caden Lee, and you look at these other receivers, Deuce Alexander, they've really lifted some of this weight off of his shoulders to allow them to really shine. So for me, Trinidad Chambliss is just one piece of the puzzle that's allowed this team to really be successful.
Yeah, and sitting there at 1,500 plus passing yards and a bunch of touchdowns. Only throwing one pick on the season, I believe, if I'm remembering that correctly. And I think I also saw that he's like 23 years old, which is old for a college quarterback. But with that age does bring some maturity. How do you think that maturity has kind of helped him bring that over as a leader and into his leadership now? Because backup quarterbacks don't really have to be that much of a leader to your entire team. You might be the leader in some regard, and like you said, he is a veteran to some extent. And now having to step into that starting quarterback role, I think that maturity probably helps there in that leadership some, right?
Yeah, I think it pays dividends. I mean, this is a guy who started for multiple years at the Division II level, but having the ability to come in here and have that age factor on, like you said, 23 years old. I mean, having that maturity is key. And he's developed a close relationship with Lane Kiffin. And I think over these last couple of weeks, he's understood that he needs to step up a little bit both on and off the field. He's a quiet guy. He doesn't talk too much. So when he does kind of open up and talk to his teammates, they listen with open ears. So Trinidad's a player that's really become an X factor for this team. I love what he provides. He's been super talented with those explosive plays of 15-plus yards, but the ability to also break down defenses with his legs has been key, and the kind of extendability where he can open up plays and keep them alive has been super crucial. So on the field, he's been fantastic, but off the field, being a leader, like you alluded to, has really unlocked different elements for this offense, knowing that they have somebody to rely on. And I think you're starting to see the proofs in the product, right? You're looking at a team, top 10 in the country, 6-1, 3-1 in the SEC. Everything that they want is right in front of them. It obviously starts with the quarterback position, and he's really developed trust with Lane Kiffin to where he feels like he can dial up anything that he wants, and there's no limitations like a lot of teams might have with a backup quarterback.
Yeah, and I think it's a truly a really fun story with Trinidad, and I think he did enough. If you really look at what happened in that Georgia game, I think he did enough to win that game. But the biggest concern for Ole Miss, which seems to be the obvious one, is that defense. How does Ole Miss and the fan base, how do they see this defense moving forward? Because it is a nationally talked about team. It's a team that a lot of people believe could be good enough to make it to the playoffs and contend for a national championship. Is there still some sort of confidence or hope in this defense that it'll keep on improving as the season goes on?
I think when you have a coordinator of Pete Golding's caliber on the defensive side of the ball, there's always going to be a sense of hope. I mean, this is a guy who's fantastic at his job. Just from a personnel perspective, it might not be what you were hoping it would be at this point. I mean, you went out and you tried to revamp that entire secondary. I mean, not a single returning starter came back from last year. So it was always going to take a little bit of time. But now you're sitting here looking at week 9 and you're giving up a ton of points. We saw against Arkansas that kind of be an outlier game, but now you're stacking more games on here. You give up 17 in the fourth quarter to Georgia, and you're not necessarily seeing the evolution that you would have liked to have seen from the defense to this point. For me, man, it starts with the secondary. I haven't been that impressed with what Sage Ryan has provided at the safety position back there. It's been a struggle. And now you go on the road to Norman. You play against John Mateer. I mean, this is a guy who's electric, and his ability to extend plays too, man. I sit here and talk about Trinidad Chambliss and what he can do with his legs and the ability to throw on the run and contort his body. But now you're going up against a quarterback on the other side who can do the exact same thing. So I think it's going to be a tremendous challenge for this defense. But to get back to the question, I think there's always a certain level of hope and kind of an ease of mind knowing that you have Pete Golding there. But can his scheme be strong enough to help with the limitations that you have from a personnel perspective? That's to be seen.
So in this matchup, like we've mentioned, it seems irresistible force of an offense against an immovable object in Oklahoma's defense. That's the big one there. What do you think, kind of breaking that matchup alone down, what do you think is the key matchup or maybe the one that decides this game in your mind?
Yeah, I think it's going to be how they spy Trinidad Chambliss. And I hate for us to sound like a broken record here because we've sat here and talked about him so much, but this is a guy that you have to keep a spy on at all times. So the second level of defense is where my eyes are going to be for the most part, to see how they keep Trinidad in the pocket. And sure, if you keep him in the pocket, he can be successful. But again, you want to limit him and contain him and not allow him to break open these big-time plays. So the matchup that I'm going to be keeping tabs on is how that second level of defense can keep him in the pocket and not allow him to roll out and extend those big-time plays. So Trinidad's a guy who, he went on the road to Athens and performed extremely well. But now you go up against a defense that is even more of a challenge, in my opinion. I think the analytics would back that. On the road, 11 a.m. kickoff. There's a lot of different outside factors here that might not favor him or this Ole Miss program going into it. And again, there's a reason why Vegas is kind of favoring Oklahoma in this one for a reason. So that's the matchup that I'm looking at. It's going to be intriguing to see how Lane Kiffin can kind of scheme out of it and allow his quarterback to be successful.
Do you think that some of the film from last week for Oklahoma being able to slow down a guy that's very similar to Trinidad Chambliss in some regard, that they're both very mobile, I think mobile in different ways, but do you think that film helps Ole Miss a little bit, maybe be able to scheme some ways to get Trinidad Chambliss out in space and use his legs when needed?
Certainly. I think that's what they're going to be looking to do in this one. I mean, his ability to extend plays is so significant. You have to play to your strengths, especially going up against such a talented team. I mean, we know what Brent Venables can do here. I mean, there's a reason why analytically they're so strong. So when it looks to Lane Kiffin's his play calling and what he's trying to do with Trinidad, of course, man, you want to play to your strengths, and you've seen enough film on Trinidad to know what his strengths are at this point. Now it's just continuing to keep it simple. I know everybody likes to say the saying, "Kiss what? Keep it simple, stupid." So you keep it simple and you utilize Trinidad to the best of his abilities, and then you fall back on Kawan Lacey a little bit, and you're going to be in a pretty good spot here.
And I think what Lane Kiffin does with Trinidad Chambliss, or really any of his quarterbacks that you've seen in the past, is that he does adapt really well to who's at quarterback. And I think that's something that South Carolina is still trying to figure out. How do you adapt to allow Lenora Sellers to use the most gifted talent that he has, and they don't do a great job of that, where I think Ole Miss will be better at that because I have more faith in what Lane Kiffin does there on his offense. But Zach, let's bring it home. Let's get predictions. What's your prediction for this game? Who ends up winning and why?
It's tough for me just because the defense for Oklahoma is so strong. I loved how you said they're an immovable object. I mean, they're super talented. And then you factor in being at home for the Sooners, 11 a.m. kickoff. There's so many things that favor them. And I know we've talked about that kind of endlessly here, and I can't sound contradictory. I have to stick to what I was saying before. And for me, it makes it a tough task for Ole Miss. So I have to give Oklahoma the edge in this one by a slight margin of about 27-24, 27-21. I do think that Oklahoma is going to get this one done here, unfortunately, for the Rebels. But look, you have two losses here. If you can run the table for Ole Miss, you can put yourself in a good position, but your back is certainly going to be against the wall. I think John Mateer is an extremely talented quarterback. I think their offense has sneaky weapons, and I think it could give this Ole Miss defense some trouble too. So for me, this Thursday prediction, I'm going to have to lean towards Oklahoma. Maybe over the next 48 hours, I sit back and read a couple different things and kind of dive into the film a little bit more, and maybe my opinion sways in a different direction. But certainly right now, I would certainly have to sit back and give Oklahoma the edge in this one.
It has been certainly that way for me, where it's really hard because I respect Ole Miss a ton, and I would have originally picked Ole Miss to win, without even looking at it. But then the more you do dive down into it, and like you said, this defense is just the one that I think Oklahoma fans have a ton of confidence in, and never have lost confidence in that defense. And so certainly will be the tale of the tape. No doubt. It's going to be how good is this defense against one of the best offenses. I think one of the trickiest offenses in the nation for sure. But Zach, let my listeners know real quick where they can find all your great work.
Absolutely, man. For me on my personal page, it's at ZNagy20. Always putting out some content on X or Twitter, whichever one you'd like to call it. And then at Ole Miss On SI. That's where we're rolling out a ton of content, some pregame coverage, recruiting updates, whatever you need related to the Ole Miss Rebels. We've got it on the site. So make sure to check it out. Expecting a really good one this weekend in Norman. Excited to see how it shakes out. So nonetheless, stage is set, man. Top 15 matchup in Norman, 11 a.m. kickoff. Excited to see what transpires.
It's going to be a fun one, but everyone, Zack Nagy, of course, like we mentioned a moment ago, no relation to Jim, just the same last name, right? But no, I appreciate you so much for jumping on and kind of give us a little bit more insight there on the Ole Miss Rebels.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you.